Brian Lair on WNYC. Now another of the segments we're doing this drive that revisit some recent segments that listeners told us ran too short. Back with us now for a second 10-minute appearance is Melissa Kirsch, writer of the New York Times' newest newsletter, The Good List. You know, with all the bad news that we're all obligated to report on, the Good List newsletter gives recommendations and tips and tricks each week for things that are good. So let's revisit the Good List and see what they're up to now. Hey, Melissa, thanks for coming on again by popular demand. Welcome back to WNYC.
Hi there.
So I see that on your list this week is voice memos. Voice memos?
Yes, voice memos. Are you not trafficking in the world of voice memos?
Yes, sometimes, but go ahead.
A voice memo is basically like a voicemail that you can record at any time asynchronously with the person that you're corresponding with and send it off to them like a text message. So it's almost like a podcast for an audience of one. And it's a very intimate form of communication. A friend of mine had told me that she really loved voice memos and had been sending them a lot. And I was just thinking about, our different forms of communication and how people complain about texting that there's no tone, or they complain that we don't talk on the phone anymore and people are loath to pick up their phones. And voice memos do seem like this sort of happy medium where you can, get sort of like a human connection even if you don't have time for that full phone call.
Yeah, and I guess you're talking about a pre-recorded voice memo, not necessarily just voice to text in a text message, because I know that when I do voice to text, it comes out sort of like AI. It gets most of what I said right, but not necessarily everything.
That's right, yeah. You can tell that someone's using voice to text. This is an actual recording of your voice.
Cool. Next on the list, a music recommendation. You recommend Austin musician Joe Alice, which is Give Me Some Good News When I Call. What are you loving about this track in particular?
I love that, it's sultry and catchy. I love her voice. And I love that a friend of mine who moved to Austin tipped me off to Joe Alice's music. And so when I listen to it, I think of her. That's
very nice. Do you do a lot of music recommendations on your good list?
I do, yeah. When something strikes me, and I try to give it some context. It's not just a good song, but here's why it's good to me, which hopefully helps people to think about what they like and what's good in their lives and why it matters to them.
And you also do movie recommendations. And the first thing on your list last week was the 40th anniversary of the movie Top Gun, the 1980s classic about Lieutenant Pete Maverick Mitchell. Why Top Gun in 2026?
I mean, it's the 40th anniversary. This was an important movie for me when I was growing up because it introduced me to the gospel that aviator sunglasses are cool and that they make everybody look cool. And
as Joe Biden was trying to convince us just the other day, but go ahead.
Exactly, but you can see that he took inspiration maybe from Maverick, maybe from General MacArthur, who also wore aviator sunglasses. I love an anniversary of a movie. I love, people say like, oh, I'm so old. It's been 40 years since, I saw Top Gun in the theater. I love sort of looking at anniversaries like that as a way to look back on your life. Like, who were you 40 years ago if you were alive? And what were you doing then? What has happened since then? Top Gun is quite the cinematic experience. So getting a chance to see Maverick on the big screen, in the original movie, there was the sequel a few years ago, but it's an opportunity and it's only in theaters for 1 week. I think today might be the last day, or tomorrow.
It's in the theaters for the 40th anniversary. Now I get it. And did you use that lens of, what has happened over all these years to compare the 2022 sequel or remake at all, or didn't you go there?
I didn't go there, but that would be interesting. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to do.
Probably for a lot of people who saw that Top Gun to now go to the theater for this limited edition run and see the old one and think, well, okay, what do I learn about the difference in the time just from the way they remade the movie?
Totally.
And while we're in the movies, this one is really interesting to me. An experience that was sort of quite the opposite of, what you listed in some of the previous ones. You went to an incredibly packed movie theater and had a hard time enjoying the film. So you recommend finding mostly empty movie theaters sometimes? That's hilarious.
Well, I came upon this website, Empty Screenings, I think it's called.
Yes, there's a website for how to find mostly empty movie theaters. That's
right.
the
I think
thing
it's just
on the list,
AMC
right?
theaters. Yeah, I think it's just AMC theaters. There's probably some sort of technical reason for that. But if you put in your zip code, and it will tell you all the screenings near you and how many that have very few tickets sold. So you'll see that like one person is going to see this movie. So you could technically tonight, depending on where you live, go to a mostly empty or empty screening of Top Gun. I don't know if that's appealing to anybody.
That's pretty funny. I guess it's an unpopularity ranking. Here's a movie nobody wants to see, but
or nobody
but it's
wants
not
to see
just
it this
about
hour.
that, right? Yeah,
right.
nobody wants
Well,
to
I
see
mean,
it this-
in a big city like New York, of course, this is useful because there are so many movie theaters and there's so many sort of odd times. So if you really wanted to have that experience of sort of having your own private screening room, you could definitely find, something to see
Right.
where there wouldn't
at
be a lot
least
of people around.
Not have to wait online and be packed in. And finally, you recommend an art project called NYC Street Clock. Tell us about it.
Oh, this is so cool. It's an online clock that uses images of New York City that are scraped from Google Maps. So it creates this artistic representation of the actual time. So, at 2:51 p.m., they might show you an image of a spray painted 251, at some graffiti somewhere in New York. And you can click through and see where that graffiti is. And then the next minute it would change and it's the number on the back of a bus for the next minute. So they're pulling numbers in from different street signs everywhere in New York City using the Google Maps street images.
Melissa Kirsch is the writer of the New York Times' newest newsletter, The Good List. Each week, the newsletter gives recommendations and some inspirations for things to do or things to see or things to think about. Thanks so much for coming on today. We'd love to keep having you back from time to time because these are provocative and kind of some of them out of the mainstream of what people would run into on their own. So thanks for today, Melissa.
Wonderful. Thank you.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.